Tis I. Hey everyone, glad to see you back. Glad to see you looking fresh. So, there's a new Thor movie out. New Marvel movie. And I think it's good. This is the first time a single character has had a fourth movie in this franchise. Which seems weird that Iron Man stopped after 3. But, I mean, whatever. We're well past that at this point. So, Thor, Love and Thunder is directed by Taika Waititi, who directed Thor Ragnarok, a movie that a lot of people saw and a lot of people loved. I thought it was great as well. But people really clamored for that movie as it's so zany and weird and out there. And it's one of the craziest movies you'll ever see. And I can imagine a lot. And when I picture that level of description, I picture something more akin to the movie I just saw last night, where Ragnarok succeeded in different aspects. I think Love and Thunder succeeds in being more crazy, more wacky, more silly, and I love it for that reason. Love and Thunder doesn't care as much about its story as Ragnarok does. Ragnarok really focuses in on character pieces and different plot lines flowing throughout, where Love and Thunder really loves spectacle and art design and action. A bunch of more technical pieces that a film has, and that's where it shows my biases less towards story and more towards other aspects of filmmaking. I understand a lot of people have issues with the story being told here, but it didn't really bother me all that much. The story deals with some heavy themes while also being a total comedy, and that's not the first film to try to do something like that. And again, because a lot of people will see this, and because of other problems that Marvel's had before, we're going to show a big spotlight anytime they make a big mess up like that, and that's all well and good. But when the film is being a comedy and being a goofy, out there comic book story, I have a blast with it. The art design is one of, if not the best, that Marvel has ever had, which the bar is not very big for that. I understand that. There are moments of this film that really feel like they actually had a vision for something, and I was like, this is super cool, and I really like this. And there were character moments and different set pieces where I was also like, this is really cool. I really like this. The film really feels like an 80s film. And if you're not well versed in 80s cinema, or maybe a less pretentious way to say that, you just haven't seen a lot of stuff from the 80s, you might see this and be like, the pacing's weird, the story's wacky, I don't get it, why are these people doing this? It just kind of feels like a different era. Where, yeah, something like Stranger Things, which is on my mind because of the finale recently, you can see 80s influences throughout, but it doesn't necessarily feel like it came out of the 80s, if that makes sense. This feels like if the special effects were how they are now in the 80s, this could feel straight out of that era. And I also really like it for that. Now, I know I've been sitting here and throwing a lot of praise towards this, but this film does have problems. While I think of story as less on the totem pole than other people in terms of what I look for in films, the story is a bit rushed, and there are character elements that don't really feel needed, or if they are needed, they're not given enough weight to. And there's even one time, and for lack of spoilers, obviously, I won't say exactly the moment, but a character says something so blatantly obvious to me that I'm sure they only said it to cover their bases for when the internet catches wind of this story, and they're like, well, why didn't they just do that instead of doing this? Speaking of characters, this film doesn't introduce a lot of new ones. The two big ones to point out are Gore, our villain, who's a really good villain, and not even just by Marvel standards. He's a good, solid villain in any typical movie. He's played by Christian Bale, who's a great actor. He does a lot of facial stuff. I always notice with Christian Bale, he's a big mouth actor, which makes him a great Batman. So, in this, Gore has very jagged teeth, and you can see he has a lot of weird stuff going on with his mouth. So, when he's mouth acting, you can really feel the power and presence that he brings. And also, there's Thor's hero, I guess, in Zeus. And I think there's a lot of fun jokes that they do with that. Zeus's character is the most accurate Zeus portrayal I probably have ever seen. I have already seen complaints that why is Zeus all wacky and he looks like that? And I don't know, like most real Zeus stories, Zeus isn't a great heroic type. Zeus is more akin to what we see in this movie. At least what I've seen anyway, unless there's a ton of stories that I missed out on. But when I picture Zeus, I think of what's in this movie more than I would something like in the Justice League film. Those are pretty much the only big new characters. There are some other ones. Obviously, it deals with New Asgard and the life of people in there as well. But it mainly focuses on Thor and Jane, who's also a Thor in this, which I won't really get into why or how that happens. I think they handled that decently well, and I think her story, while being a little bit ham-fisted at times, why we need to rewrap her into the Thor lexicon, because he just didn't want to do a couple Marvel movies for a while. And it was nice to see her back, honestly, I'll say that much. We also got some good stuff with Valkyrie and Korg, which are absolute standouts from Ragnarok. And more Korg is always great. I love him. Speaking of Korg, the comedy in this is gonna be entirely how you feel about this movie. If you think the comedy in this is funny, you will like this movie. But if you think the comedy in this is annoying, you will not like this movie. This, unlike any other Marvel film, is absolutely trying to be a straight-up comedy. And it succeeds in that aspect. It's pretty funny. I laughed more in this than I think I ever have in a Marvel film before, so big pros there. But if you find even one aspect of a recurring joke annoying, it might irritate you enough to like roll your eyes at the next thing or the next thing or the next thing. And even me, there was a couple jokes I'm like, okay, easy joke there, or like that wasn't necessary, I didn't think that was that funny. Something like that. So, overall, Thor Love and Thunder was an absolute blast. I had a very fun time watching it, and I give it a SAW score of an 8 out of 10. Been a while since I've given one of those out, hasn't it? If you guys are planning to see Thor Love and Thunder, if you have already, please let me know what you think of it down below. I will continue to try to make SAW scores. It's been a while. I feel like every time I try to make one of these, something happens in my personal life, and I'm unable to. So, here's hoping that it takes a God of Thunder to bring back this series. So, as always, thank you so very much for watching. Like this if you like this, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you at some point.